So you signed him, what, 92?
92.
So he's on, how much was he on, basic?
Let's just say you had a Scottish granny, right? Just say, would you have stopped Gaza?
On the afternoon, I was going in and they said, right, you'll wake up and it'll be one of two ways. If you're in an oxygen tent, we've removed the shin from below the knee.
Brilliant, nice one. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate this. It's our first, obviously, podcast with a camera, which is obviously exciting for everybody. Just like to welcome a good friend of mine, next teammate, David Busst, and obviously my co-host, René Butler. Just basically, David, Bussty, we're just going to talk, literally, go through a few things, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the highs and lows. We might just obviously go off title a little bit maybe, but it's just a nice little gentle chat, just about your football career and obviously the famous injury. But we'd just like to start off with, you know, how did it come about being a footballer and stuff like that? So just, you know, this is like a little bit of a warm-up really.
Probably started like the same. Every kid, you know, you given a football. I had a dad that was into sport. Football was his main one. I had an older brother, so playing. I remember my first experience was because he didn't have the setups now they have with the academies and all things like that, and you couldn't even get into a team until you were like under 10, under 11. You know, and my brother was in the year above me, but was 2 years, 18 months older than me, and he was playing for the Scouts, and they had a team, so I wanted to play for that team, and you know, and as it was, you know, I could run a little bit there. I was playing up front, and I just went along with him, and they asked me to play, and so my first experience of a team was playing a year above with my brother in that team, and you just want to play football. I'm not a great watcher of football. I'm still not a great watcher of football. I watch highlights. It has to be a really good game to engross me. So whenever any football was on, I don't know, probably Star Soccer or the Big Match, all these ones back in the 70s, I'd be outside kicking a ball against the wall, playing with a couple of mates, you know, street football, jumpers for goalposts, whatever. That's how I grew up. Yeah. You know, unwittingly probably learning, you know, my trade really, you know, finding the skills. But at under 14 was when we was approached from a. You couldn't be attached to any professional football club. So what the clever people did was they would set up a Sunday football club. In my case, it was Dunlop Terriers, and then they would get the players that they wanted to play regularly, but not under the club's banner in any way. So we were playing in Aston Villa's kit. We went round in an Aston Villa minibus. We trained just down the road from Aston Villa every Friday night, and we were players from all over the Midlands. So we had a couple of lads from, I don't know if you remember Paul Reed, used to be at Leicester. So
yeah.
He was a year below me, but you know, lads were either playing a year below, year above. And people like Mark Walters and Gary Shaw had also played for Dunlop Terriers, very much Aston based. So they went and cherry picked all over. And that was the closest we came to being schoolboys. The ones that were really good would get signed at schoolboy forms, and the rest were kept sort of just ticking along, make sure they kept an eye on them. And 9 of my team, under 16s, went and signed for Leicester City as APs, apprentices, and I didn't. So I had a growth spurt, and I was playing left wing and left midfield, and sometimes up front, up to 16. And my last year with Dunlop Terriers, they put me at sweeper, and I was getting smaller, and I was a little bit chunkier. And then that's where I sort of stayed there. So the next 2 years, I went and played. I worked for Botanic Assurance, and they were playing in Division 2 of the Works League, and that was the best grounding for me, because not only did I have a growth spurt between sort of 15 and 18, where I probably grew a foot, I was playing in adults football, couldn't play, would get kicked, would get elbowed, and it really sort of, you know, the physical side of the game, the attributes you need for the physical side, I learned on the parks pitches in and around Birmingham. And then from that, you just get picked up. And I was, you know, my dad, who was very much into football, connected with Solihull Borough. He got me to go and play for their reserve team. He was a scout for the first team. So I spent half the season with them. Then when I went to a team called Kings Heath in the Midland Com, again, their reserve team, worked my way up to the first team. And then the change came when we played in the Birmingham Senior Cup. We played Moor Green. And in that team, there was the likes of me, Ian Taylor. That's the yeah.
Right,
so we played at Moor Green in reserves. That's where we first met, and we got into the first team at Moor Green at the same time, and then I was playing for Kings Heath. We drew 0-0 in the Birmingham Senior Cup, and then we had a replay, and we lost the replay, and then Bob Faulkner signed me. He had to come and drag me from my home to go and sign, because twice I didn't turn up, because I wanted to play with my mates.
Wow.
Bob Faulkner's massive in 25 years. He's spent sadly not with us anymore, but big influence on my career. And so I went to Moor Green then, and then while I was at Moor Green, played 4 years I had there, from 19 to sort of 23, 24, and had various trials at various clubs. I remember going to Warsaw, where John Barnwell was manager. Dean Smith, played alongside Dean Smith in a youth team match, but didn't quite make it. And then
How old was you then at Warsaw?
I was about 22 at Warsaw.
Oh, really?
Yeah, spent 2 weeks there. That didn't come off, and I thought, that's it now. I'll just concentrate, working and playing non-league. And Barry Powell, do you remember?
Yeah, I know Barry. Yeah.
So Barry Powell was working. His last chance after he's on the downward of his pro career. He ended up at Moor Green for a year.
Right.
And he knew John Bettles, who was the scout for the West Midlands. And Coventry at that time were renowned for picking up players from non-league. Sean Flynn, Andy Pearce, Tim Clark, goalkeeper. And Barry said to Terry Butcher, who obviously knew quite well through the work he was doing at the community scheme, said, come and watch this lad. And they did invite me for a trial.
So was at this point, was you a centre-half then, at this point?
I was
or were you still playing up front?
No. So I was, after 16, I'd never played
Right,
up
get you.
front again.
Right, get you.
And I was a right-footed player playing on the left wing predominantly. So during that sort of 3 or 4 years of where I was growing, I was, my body was all out of kills and growth spurts, and
So what type of centre-half was you then back then?
I was always playing. I always was a sweeper, so I was the one that was sort of
Just mop all
reading the
them.
game, mopping it up.
Yeah.
And then
Well, that would make sense actually if Butcher,
yeah.
Wanted
That
to
type
sign
of
you.
mould
He was
of a
very
player,
smart
yeah.
wasn't he?
So with him coming to watch me, he would be looking for something, whereas Bobby Gould, who was a centre forward, wouldn't appreciate certain little things.
Yeah.
So again, that's a little bit of luck you have too.
Yeah,
Butcher, massive centre half for England, Ipswich Rangers. And they invited me for a trial, had a week's trial, came up against the likes of Paul Furlong at the time.
Strong, powerful, yeah.
Kevin Gallagher was
William,
in there, and all of a sudden that's a massive leap. And I thought I did right, spent the week there, had a week off work, and then played a reserve game, and you'll remember Martin Bussty.
Yeah.
We had a reserve game at Highfield Road. Went for a ball. I called Busst. He called Booty. We both went to the same ball, and I ended up whacking the bottom of his studs and broke my toe.
Wow.
Big toe. And then we had a game the following week at Man United away. And I thought, I can't tell anyone I've got a broken toe. I'm just going to have to go through it, because this chance is not going to happen again. And we went up to Old Trafford on the coach, real nice coach, not from what I was used to.
Yeah.
These had tables. Never seen anything like it. Terry was on there as well, and Sean Flynn, who I'd come up against. It wasn't a mate, but I'd come up against him in non-league. He'd signed 2 months sort of prior to that game.
Right.
And we were playing. So it was Old Trafford. It was Lee Sharp's comeback game from when he first did his knee injury. There was 9 internationals in the Man United side. I think Mark Robbins might have been in that team actually.
Wow.
And 15,000 fans had turned up to watch this reserve game at Old Trafford. And
No pressure then?
yeah, and he played really well actually. I think we drew.
1-0 was it?
Drew 1-0, yeah.
Wallace penalty.
Wallace, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think Sean Flynn might have scored for us actually. So again, that was, I suppose a test they saw that I could stand up to it, and I played with a broken toe.
To be fair, if you're going to get thrown into any kind of situation, that is probably the best. It's a sink or swim in it.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And
you want to find out how you're going to cope with a crowd. And things like that. And
that in itself's pressurised as well, isn't it?
So you've gone from playing for Moor Green in front of 300, 400, 500 people to playing at Old Trafford.
On your debut.
Yeah, well, it was a reserve game.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. Just in the reserves, but
it wasn't in reserves. I was on trial. So,
wow. Not many people play in front of 15,000 anyway, did they? Let's be honest.
And you just see the team sheet comes through, and you're looking at 9 internationals were playing.
Wow. Of course, It's interesting because that it was, as you say, used as a combat game for Lee Sharp, but according to Roy Keane in his first autobiography, Sharp rushed his comeback. You know, he was out partying all the time rather than doing his rehab. You know.
But how good was he?
But he never the same player again.
No.
He was obviously he was a local. He was a Hell's Owen lad as well, so he knew Flinney and all them. And it was, you know, it was the year of the footballers then. It wasn't. You can't compare it to now and back then. It was.
That's the lifestyle,
there was a drinking culture. I call it socials.
It was part and parcel of football, wasn't it?
Yeah, you went out, you had a reserve game, you had a few beers afterwards on your day off. The next day you went out, you came back, you trained hard.
Just a normal, wasn't it?
And get out your assist, and that was, you know.
And who did you mark in that game?
We were talking about it. I can't.
I'm shocking as well.
And again, it's different times when I've played against United in reserve, majority of the time. So I remember playing against Dion, and I think that was Dion and Mark Robbins was there.
Wow.
Obviously, Wallace was playing. I'd have to get a think out to see, because I just know. I remember Mal Donaghy. He was one of the internationals then. I can't remember who it was for.
Did you pad your boot out?
I went to Boots and bought this foam thing which goes over. We used to put them on your big toes anyway, didn't you? To get someone trod on your toe. It was like a sponge on your boots. You had
like a protection thing on it, yeah.
So I just went and got one of them and put that and just taped it up as much as I could. And
incredible.
I always remember as well that afterwards we were talking about George Dalton, who was a physio. So obviously I'd got like a blood blister underneath it as well, and then he was drilling it, and he drilled into my big toe, and all the blood came out. But you know, about a few weeks after, the toe had got infected. So, and again, in between from when I come back, I couldn't play for Moor Green anymore because I'd got this septic toe from from him drilling into my.
He's done that plenty of times to me. Trust me, it was just a thing. He loved seeing people in pain as well.
No,
honestly,
he hadn't done anything wrong.
No, that's what I mean. Honestly, that was the known thing to do. Bosh, get all the pressure out. Done.
And it was. It just happened to me that I got infected.
Well, that's incredible, though, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like you say, you've come from non-league where the tempo is nowhere near as. Even the reserve teams are fast paced with 9 internationals in front of 15,000 people. You get thrown in there, obviously do well.
And then you're thinking then, right, the next thing, what's going on? And obviously after that game, they said, right, we want to sort you. Coventry didn't have any money at all then, even to buy a non-league player. Not that I was on contract or anything. They've gone, but we've got to put a deal together for you, and that took 2 or 3 weeks. And then this was coming into December, around Christmas time. And then I'll never forget, just after Christmas, shortly before New Year, I think it was. I just saw on the news, or teletext, not the news, it was teletext.
Teletext, yeah.
Oh, that was
CFAX, Oracle,
brilliant.
teletext.
Yeah.
That's how we used to get our information.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent to the
You can't
ticker
wait for the
tape.
page to change.
Yeah.
The ticker tape bar that goes across Sky at the moment. That was our teletext page, and you'd go there, you'd find out who was moving on, or
the cameraman's thinking, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, teletext. We'll explain later, mate. Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And then I saw that Terry Butcher got the sack, and I just thought,
heart pounder.
What's going on here? And so you get onto the phone to people you know. Again, phone, no mobiles back there. Spoke to John Bettles, he's not with us anymore, but he was brilliant. And he said, look, I'll make a few phone calls, I'll speak to whatever. And this happened, and I handed him a notice in at Britannic Assurance as well. So I was like, what's going on? And this lasted for about a day and a half, so it's not like going on for weeks thinking what's going on. But it felt like an eternity with me. But luckily John came back and he said, look, Donow's taken over. Donow was Terry's number 2. He was while I was training with the first team on trial, he was there for the Man United game. Terry had obviously said that they wanted to sign me or ask his opinion. So he said it wasn't a case of, oh, well, you're not my player. He said, look, we'll honour the deal that Terry had tried to get for you.
That's good, brilliant.
I didn't know what that deal was, but we'll still sign you. Can you come down and have a chat? And I just remember going in, and because I worked in insurance, so I had to wear a suit all the time. My dad came with me and walked into the through the doors into the big room. Pool tables over there. Steve Ogwozowicz came over to me and he goes, oh, that looks like a signing on suit to me. And
brilliant, mate.
And then I went upstairs, had a chat. My dad, I'm glad my dad was there because I'd have only signed for 12 months had he not been there.
Oh, so it did just offer you a year's deal at the time?
Yeah, actually they offered me a year because this was January time, so they were offering me a year and a season and a half. And I'd have just signed whatever they asked me to, but my dad just tapped me on the shoulder and said, look, he's got a wife, he's got a family, he's got commitments, he's got a job that need a little bit more security. And Dino just went, well, what are you thinking? He said, well, 2.5 years, we'll just give it a little bit more. And it went fine. He goes, just got to ring Moore Green now. So they were on the phone to Bob Faulkner, talking to him, because there was no fee involved, but they wanted to do it properly. So I think they ended up signing, I think they said that they'd give them £5,000 and they'd take the Coventry team down for a pre-season friendly.
That's good, because you've done contract as well, haven't you?
Yeah, and that's how Coventry wanted to operate. They didn't want to just take me away. They could have done, and I could have won. And if I'd have heard any arguments, I'd have been on the phone to Bob, as much as I liked him. You know, there's no obligation for me to stay. You know, I can go.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They did it right, and it was. Made
So going from the part-time football, I mean, I've gone from Premier League now to the bottom. You've gone from bottom to the Premier League. So that transition of working all day, then you've got to go training, then all of a sudden you've literally scrapped that, and now you're a full-time footballer. How good's that? The tempo. What was the tempo like from obviously non-league to Premier League?
It was. I always thought I was. You know, I've got a family and that, so I wasn't at that age. You know, 24. I wasn't going out. So I was quite fit. I was playing 3 times a week, training one other day. But when you go to full-time training, it took me 6 months to get to anywhere near.
And,
you know, I was playing reserve team football for the next 6 months, but your whole the routine changes, because I was used to playing Saturdays and Tuesdays, and then all of a sudden the preparation is all geared around the first team, and then you might have to go and be a runner against the first team while they're doing their pattern of play, and then I was never anywhere near the first team squad for the first 6 months. But just the physical training part of it. Yeah. I mean, Flinney was a anomaly. He was, he would come off the building sites, and he was as fit, if not fitter, than the pros. But I wasn't. I was, getting used to having to train every single day.
And
it's tough.
How different is it now for non-league players that make the same trajectory as you have? Say, obviously Tyrone Mings had a very sort of similar path to you. He was working, he was a mortgage advisor, I think, and obviously you were financial advisor, is that right?
Yeah,
and worked for Britannic Insurance. Yeah. Then you get signed in the big league. But if Chris Smalling's another one, I think, was non-league, made a Premier League centre back, didn't he? But what would they do now? Do they have 6 months pushing through the reserves?
I don't know. It'd be how fit you are before, how you adapt, and what level you come in at. So again, my history of other players and that. So the Chris Smallings and the Tyrone Mings, I don't know whether they'd come in at clubs in lower divisions, whether that might have been easier for me.
Because you had no
loan anywhere. No.
Because you didn't obviously go through an academy either, did you? Type of thing. I know they didn't, but that's hard in itself as well, because you kind of get moulded into the team way of the shape play and stuff like that, don't you? Yeah. So you've literally gone from probably a little bit of pattern of play and a little bit of shape at Moor Green to structured environment. Do you know what I mean? And that is hard in itself. Yeah. It's so hard to adapt quite quickly.
So in that first 12 months, it was 12 months. I signed in the January, and I made my debut 12 months later. In between then, I was getting fit. I was still playing the reserve team football. I was nowhere near the first team. And then the next 6 months, then it's, we were talking about it before, you play along players, and players will say little bits. And I always remember Peter Billing. You'll remember Peter Billing. Yeah. He was a centre-half, probably, just been in the first team a lot at Coventry, especially in League One, and that, when it was the old League One. As it got into the Premier League, probably wasn't quite that level, but still played enough games. And I ended up playing alongside him a lot of reserve team games, and I learned so much off him about position, talking about goal side, ball side. These are terminology I've not heard before. I know what they are, but he would give me an understanding. He goes, look, if it's goal side, ball side, and you're on that side, the forward's got to run across you, so he can't nip
football lingo, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's just little things like that about positional sense. So I won't say I was very quick, but for a centre half I was quick. Had a good recovery of that, and I had a good understanding of the ball, and I knew how to tackle the ball, and knew how to tackle, and I was quite good, with the ball at my feet as well. So, but you have to hone the rest of it. There's a whole different ball game that comes into it, and I learned that off experienced professionals that had been there. And you're picking up the little players. So I was playing alongside Lloyd McGrath. Now Lloyd McGrath was again probably on the downward of going out of top level football. Mickey Ginn, for the first year. These are all extremely good footballers that I learned so much off. because they were then playing, you know, Dean Emerson, they were playing in the reserve. Nuddy was on his way up. Peter and Love was just started off with me, and you're playing with those sort of calibre of players, and you just learn off everyone. You've got to be a sponge in football.
You have to. So obviously, again, that transition between non-league, did you feel accepted straight away as soon as you walked through the training ground? Or was it kind of like, did you have that little bit of, not so much ego, but it was like, he's a non-league player? Or was it like you was accepted straight away? And
I think you get it anyway, no matter what dressing room you go into, whether it's anything, because you're going in and someone else plays place. In your thing, and at the elite level of football, it's going to happen. The thing that worked well for me was, and it depends whether you're a cocky little. Are we swearing? No. If you're
you can swear.
Yeah. You won't make mates quickly, and they'll want to put you down. But I went in. There was quite a few of the non-league boys had come up that way. So Flinney and Andy Pearce, and I used to room with Andy Pearce, and that was awkward because when I made my debut, I was rooming with Andy Pearce, and he got dropped.
Oh wow!
And I replaced him.
Yeah.
But so I went in and I knew familiar faces as such,
that helps
and
as well,
you just
doesn't
hone into them.
Yeah.
You know, but we had it wasn't back then. There wasn't superstars or anything like that. And that's not saying just because someone's these days is a high signing or anything like that. It doesn't mean every dressing room has the same cohort of players. They'll have your loud, cocky ones that are there for taking the mick out. You'll have your quiet, unassuming ones who just want to go about and get the ones. And you'll have the middle of the road ones which are dipping in and out of all of them. And that don't change in any of them. And it's how you are as a person. So with mine, I'd been in insurance. I knew how to talk to people. Yeah. I knew how to be
approachable as well.
My own life skills, which I was brought up with, and values, the way I played the game and things like that. That all comes from my family, and that defines who you are.
And to be fair, that goes well with me because obviously we're 10, 11 years apart. But when I obviously joined, you was like that calming influence to the youngsters as well. Do you know what I mean? So you kind of look up to the people like yourself and go, right, how does he adapt to this? Blah, blah, blah. So that helped me. So obviously it's like a chain, innit? You go into a dressing room, you're hoping that someone like Bussty will be there. Obviously I'll come in and you was that, along with a lot of others like Noel Whelan, Paul Telfer. You got your Paul Williams who would have a little go at you because that was part and parcel of football. Still a good lad, but obviously a different approach to the youngsters.
I think it's just the way you're brought up. And, I always had one of the sort of life skills is, treat others how you want to be treated yourself. So, whether it was, I used to spend a lot of time in the reserves, and all the youngsters, were in there. So that's how I know the likes of yourself and Gav and Willie Boland and Marcus and all of those that were coming up. Spent a lot of time with them, and I was older, and I could sort of give them that thing. Look, that sort of grounding, saying, look, you got to remember, football's not always going to be there, and I was always going. PFA, right? Get in touch. Do your coaching badges now, because you never. There's a life after football.
Long time we say that.
Yeah, you're going to have to adapt to going off. So, I was sort of that older person that had sort of had the working experience, gone into that, and I knew I'd never be there at playing football for long. I knew I'd be going back to the working. I used to call it the real world. Yeah. So I used to just be a grounding, a soundboard, saying, look, do what you can when you can, but plan for.
And how different is it now? Do you think between the first team, youth team and reserve teams? Do you think that the senior pros are as encouraging of the up and coming players, or is there more detachment?
It's changed so much since 25, 26 years since I was in that. It's obviously with the job that I do now, I'm in and around it, but I'm nowhere near finding out what relationships are like. I just go from over the years, dealing with all the player appearances at Coventry City, it's the same thing. You'll have your players that will go out their way and do everything for you. They'll have that where they've come from. Is it non-league? Is it lower league coming into Coventry? You'll have ones that, attitudes are a little bit, oh no, I ain't doing that. And it's the same up and down.
I just think it's brutal. Back in the day, not so much brutal, but the banter was very brutal. I mean, I don't think you can get away with it now, could you?
No, there's probably a politically correct climate.
Yeah. And social media as well, does it?
Everything's transparent.
You only got to follow some of the people that are doing all the TikTok stuff, and you look at Lingard, and I love watching it because but it's. These days, you have to be so much more.
Exactly, and a mistake now is a mistake forever. Yeah. You're under scrutiny
spotlight
all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So just going then, obviously you've got obviously he wasn't obviously getting paid massive amounts at Moor Green. Obviously he was getting a decent job money. What was it like when you first got your first pay packet at Coventry? Was it like open it up, can't believe it, here we go, I've made it, or was it the opposite?
It was it was quite grounded. Well, not grounding because I knew what I was doing. So the contract I got offered was £325 a week, and then they go into your bonuses if you're in the first team. £200 win bonus, £100 draw, and then that was it. There was nothing else. So like potentially, if you were playing and winning, you were pulling in 600 quid.
So you signed him what, 92?
92.
So he was on, how much was you on basic?
I was on 325 for the first 18 months, and then it went up to 375 for the last year.
So everybody that's listening to this, people automatically think footballers are just going to get thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
And automatically you're going to be set up for life. So that for me is perfect. You know what I mean? You think it's still not bad money, don't get me wrong, back then. But
I was obviously, as I've said, the money I was earning from non-league and my job was more than the basic I signed for. Yeah. And for 12 months, the basic is what I got. And you still had to win games to get. You got appearance money as well, didn't you? And it was very much the same for whether you were a professional like me, whether you was not an apprentice or a YT. The bonuses were the same. It was, I think, a few other players might have been different, but it was usually 200 win, 200 appearance, and then draw was that. So if you were winning, if you were playing winning, you were getting an extra. That's what it was. You were getting an extra 400 quid a game.
Top up,
and that's good money compared to whatever it was. I was just at the time. I would have signed for a lot less to go and have the chance to be a professional footballer.
Well, even in the Premier League in the early to mid 90s, the average weekly wage as just a basic wage was over £2,000 a week, whereas now, for example, it's £61,000 a week. But people, they hear Premier League and they assume, like you say, Scott, bang, mansions, sports cars, etc. But at the thick end, the sharp end, if you will, of Premier League football is a massive difference, isn't there?
Yeah. I signed when I got into the team under Phil Neal. I think it was 94, 95 season where I paid the majority, at least half of the total appearances I made. I was out of contract, so I would have been, I was out of contract and I was on a free, so I was on a week-to-week then. And then I was able to haggle a little bit with Phil Neal because Phil Babb had left, Peter Atherton had left, Pete Billing had already gone. There was no centre-halves, so it was literally, you're playing me against Wimbledon on Saturday, or no one. And so that week I hadn't signed, so I was able to, I managed to get £1,000 basic then out of them, and that was a 2-year contract, and that's the contract I finished with, because obviously 2 years down the line.
So that was a big leap then, wasn't it, really? A big leap in.
But it was just the, you could see players in my mates who were quite close to me. There was a group of Sean Flynn, Steve Morgans, Lee Jenkinsons, all of those lot. They'd sort of been bought in through Bobby Gould. So you have a chat and you find out what they're on. And I remember Sean Flynn telling me they'd put him up to 700, 750, and quite rightly so. He played a hell of a lot of games in the first team. So you knew what your benchmark was. And as I say, I was in a little bit of a privileged position where I was saying to Phil, I know you've got no one else.
Seller's market.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because apparently, since the formation of the Premier League, and some people assume football began in 1992, and of course it didn't. But the great negotiators were Jurgen Klinsmann and Eric Cantona. Apparently, they did a lot of their bidding and hustling themselves, and that precedent and the atmosphere that they created at their clubs filtered down to all the other players and helped make them a little bit more street smart. And
you didn't want to see people getting taken advantage of as well. So if you had a young player that was coming through, I remember the older players would say to him, look, don't sign, get yourself an agent, and whatever you thought about it, it's, just don't go in and sign the first thing. It's basically bargaining skills. It's like anything in life, any job. You're going to go in and you're going to go, right, actually, you're offering this. Actually, if you can get me this, or it's getting you add-ons and that. So that's good. It's negotiating skills, life skills.
That's good. Just going on, obviously, like we said, we've got a topic to kind of go with. The good parts then. What's the good parts of being a footballer? And obviously in a coach and stuff like that, What would you say is the good parts?
Getting paid to play the game that you love. Yeah. Regardless of...
Did you actually class it as a job? Because I never did.
No,
you
wouldn't
would
say
you?
to get paid to do your
actually
job.
yeah.
That's it. It wasn't a job. I enjoyed doing it. I don't go. You can also say we love playing football, but I know on a day like today, we'd still be out training. I'm not pulling on anyone's heartstrings because we'd probably be out for an hour if it was like icy things like that, or when you're doing pre-season. And when I was doing pre-season, it was a mixture of the, I was there when we went to the parachute down in Aldershot and Lee Hurst.
God, yeah. Bad injury, wasn't it? Yeah.
His knee, great
obstacle course,
great
wasn't
prospect, and his career had never recovered from that, and he was one of the hottest young players coming through.
What a player.
And, things can happen, injuries can happen. No one could foresee those. I would probably question why we were jumping down off 6-foot walls on a pre-season. I get why we were there, because it was to build
the bond,
between the team. But looking back, that's hindsight for you, though.
So, what was it like? Obviously, when the first fan come up to you with an autograph, did you think, well, I've made it now, or that must have been like a big achievement? Because I'll be honest with you, I was a reserve team player at Coventry. First person that came to me, I was thinking, oh my God, I'm just a normal person. But you do it honestly. It's bizarre for me, but
not from what I've seen earlier in Costas.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously I smell nice, so obviously that's all I was going to get. But you know what I mean? It's like, did you then? Is it like not an ego thing, but you kind of think, well, I'm starting to get recognised now, and
I think anyone who asks for anyone's
it's a privilege, isn't it?
It's a privilege, and there'll be a time when people won't want to ask. So that's what you got to, and even to this day now, it doesn't happen much. But I've always got time for someone, even if you've been over to where Costa and Tesco's is, someone will stop me and just have a chat.
Yeah.
You've got to understand, for someone to ask you for your autograph is to not see it from your point of view. Oh yeah, I'm Billy Big so and so. It's, my God, you're actually asking me for. Right, I'm the one who's privileged because you've asked.
Yeah, they're putting themselves in a subservient position.
And so that's I've always again. It comes down to who you are as a person, what your morals are like, what your upbringing was about, and if someone wants to have your autograph, and then you should put
it's kind of 2 minutes out of your time, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what you've got to look at it.
There are some footballers, one of the greatest to ever play the game, Cristiano Ronaldo, who, and it's not just for cameras, he does genuinely go out of his way to sign autographs, make his time to spend with the fans, etc. I mean, I remember, the Premier League footballer that always seemed to have time for fans was Ian Wright. Could never.
But again, it's come from that
could never
mould.
do enough. Whereas there's others, I won't mention them, some high profile, they just didn't want to know.
I think it's just yourself going, making sure it's who you are as a person, and understanding just because you're now a footballer doesn't make you any better than anybody else.
No, I get that.
And you should understand how people in the high esteem they hold you and respect them.
So if people don't know, obviously at the Wrighton and Dunsmuir, it's like most clubs really. You've got your first team dressing room, you've got your reserve team dressing room, you've got your youth team dressing room. So I'm assuming you was in the reserve team dressing room to start with. At what point did you get promoted into that first team? Because I know a couple of lads, I think Marcus Hall was one of them, to be fair. He was in the reserve team dressing room, made it as a so-called first team player, which he did, but he kept in that dressing room. So, when did you actually walk in there and think, oh my God?
I don't know if it was because of my age, but I was in the...
Or did you go straight in there?
Straight in the first team dressing room.
Right.
When I had my trial, I was in there.
Right.
I always remember sitting next to Andy Pearce, and that you'll remember the wooden things.
Yeah.
I mean, and these days it's all one. So right, and now they're 3 changing rooms they had. That's all knocked into one big one.
Right.
So there's none of that.
Divide type of
divide or anything like that. But I was in. I just naturally gone in there, and was.
So obviously the good points is, obviously they say the banter. People know that the banter's unbelievable. Who was the characters in that era of yours in '92, '93, '94 season?
So Peter Billing earlier. I mean, again, footballers come and go overnight. So Peter Billing, he was always, Scouse. I always remember him used to, and it's that argument, bullying, banter.
Yeah.
I always remember he used to take the mick out of Raywoods.
Right.
And he used to give as good as he got. So he was a big character around the dressing room.
Yeah.
And then when you come to the era of when I was sort of playing more, and you become more established in that dressing room. So
the personality comes out a bit more.
There was our group. So John Williams, Sean Flynn, Lee Jenkinson, Steve Morgan,
Yeah.
and they're all good mates that I still see now, and we keep in touch with. And we all sort of landed in the first team at the same time, and you know, there's players like Oggy was obviously a good experience stalwart of the club. You know, Brian Burrows was there. You know, and then the new regime of players coming through, so Dion, Richard Shaw, Paul Williams, Liam Daish, you know, they come in and they bring different things to it. But, you know, like I say, it's that respectful thing. You know, I just, you know, I've always managed to get on with most people. I've never been arrogant enough to go, well, why should I be mates with you or anything like that. I just say, treat others how you want to be treated yourself.
Did you get the famous Peugeot car when you signed?
So it took me a while to get the Peugeot car. And that's where you can see the car park will tell you how finances are changing. So when Ron Atkinson come, he didn't want a Peugeot as his company car, so he had a Jag. Then all
Of course he did.
And by the way, just on record, I had to clean that. That was part of my job as
I wouldn't
a
expect
YTS.
anything else other than the Jag.
And then all the
right?
players that Ron Atkinson signed, they didn't have the Peugeots. So the Peugeots, we had to pay for them. They weren't
precedent was set.
And then all of a sudden, I always remember Dave Burrows, who I knew we'd both played for Dunlop Terraces. He was a couple of years younger than me, but we signed him, you know, and then he's coming up in a Merc. And then overnight, over about 3 weeks, our car park changed. So you had half the Peugeots and then the rest were the Mercs, the BMs. And that's where you could see where the money was changing. And
weirdly, the same thing happened at Leicester City when they signed Mark Draper in '94, you know, when we got promoted to the Premier League. He drove a brand new BMW with a personalised reg, and it started evolving from you know, your runarounds to the precedent was set. Yeah,
I loved my Peugeots.
yeah.
It took me. I had to earn the right to get one though. You couldn't have one until you were in the first team, and not just once you've made your debut, you get a Peugeot. You had to go on a waiting list, and you know.
So what car did you rock up in then?
God, you know what? It probably embarrassed me a little. I had an XR3i.
Perfect. That's an Essex.
Boy race. That's a boy race.
It was worse than that. I then bought. I think it was the week, not the week. It was just after then. When I was working in insurance, just before I signed for Coventry, I'd already bought a car, and I didn't know I was signing for Coventry, so that's how I bought it. But I had an XR3i white cabriolet with a...
Wowzers, you couldn't make it. But hang on,
With his blonde locks as well.
Married at 19, weren't you? Is that correct?
Yeah.
You know, so you have all the sort of outward appearance of someone who's a respectable, steady guy, you know, and driving these
And now he's in
archetypal...
McDonald's.
Exactly.
Yeah, McDonald's.
I just love that car. I'd
Just
go back and buy another one if I could.
While we're on good experiences, and of course it predated your time at Coventry, but it seems appropriate to mention, since they were at Coventry's home ground, the passing of John Sillett a couple of days ago. What's the atmosphere been like around the stadium?
You know, obviously I'm on the Former Players Association, and obviously we work closely with the club, so the amount of tributes that have come through, and you know, we've got to remember we lost George Curtis earlier in the year, July, August time, so the two biggest, along with Jimmy Hill, the three biggest influences on Coventry City and who gave them their best times have all you know passed away, and John had not been very well for the last couple of years, and you know, it's really sad, but it's a time to remember what he did, and you know, obviously I see people like Dave Bennett all the time, and the little stories, the bits you don't hear about him. Those little nuggets of what he did for those players at that time.
You don't realise, do you?
No.
Until it's happened, and obviously it's like anything. The good parts always seem to come out when a tragedy happens. You know what I mean? Because I'm picking up things as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in Market Avenue, but you're still there. And I never met the bloke, to be honest with you. But like you said, the stuff that he did was incredible for the club and the city in itself.
Yeah, I was going to say the city
and the city itself.
The Runner Stadium. I mean, I was sort of 6-7 years old when the Sky Blues won the FA Cup in 1987, and that's when the FA Cup still really meant something. I'm a Leicester fan. Leicester won the FA Cup first ever time, last May.
Charlie, edit that bit out about Leicester fan, yeah, mate.
Runners up 4 times. Everybody's been desperate to win the FA Cup. To be honest, now it's like, well, does it really mean that much? But then in 1987, for a club like Coventry City to win the FA Cup was huge.
I just say it don't mean. The only people it doesn't mean anything to is the people who've never won it. I don't care whether it's now, whether it was back then, whether it was 100 years ago. That FA Cup, from where it starts in non-league to where it gets to, and Sill and Curtis and that team, the way they come up with no real superstars.
Yeah, absolutely,
You know, the semi-final against Leeds, and you know, I'd say all those players when I joined in '92. A lot of that team was still there, you know, and it was picking up the stories. And I still, like, through the former players, you still see them all. And you know, Benno, he would tell me a different story every week about what they did, the prep before it, what John would say to them. And him and George were brilliant. I mean, I don't know if George was about the training ground when you were there, but he was the strongest person.
I've seen him about, but like I said, personally, I don't know him.
The two of them were, I think, they're your modern day head coach and director of football. You know.
Yeah.
30, 40 years, well, 50, what is it now? It's been maths, 30, 35 years ago, is it?
It's, 35 years.
Yeah.
The bad side then, Mr. Busst. What would you say the bad side is with the football?
I'm an optimist, there's no bad sides.
That's what I'm saying.
It's life experiences.
That's what I'm saying. You know, the bad side, I can remember, especially in my era, we used to obviously do double session. It was like it was the most hard done by people in the world. And you look back now, you know, people are working 10, 12 hours and stuff like that. But we used to whinge at doing 2 hours in the morning, probably an hour and a half in the afternoon. It's like, how was that a bad side of football? But people genuinely was gutted. And it's like, you know.
It's like anyone.
I don't think they appreciated it, did they?
No. And if you weren't in the first team, you trained more than anyone, because you would still come in on a Saturday and do your training. You'd have a reserve team game, and you'd have to prep for that, but you'd only probably get half a day off for that. If you were then on the periphery of the first team and have to travel with them, you wouldn't get any time off. And it's like anything, if someone asks you to come back in the afternoon when you don't normally, so it was just coming into it there where they were talking about double sessions and just coming into it. And, you know, I used to have to pick the kids up from school, so if we're doing a fitness session with Tim Exeter, remember Tim? I'll be saying to him, look, it takes me half an hour to get back. My daughter comes out of school at 3:30. I've got to be away, you know. And so you used to try and manage that, you know, especially if you were injured. You were in there even longer, weren't you?
That's it, yeah.
You know, George and the
Dalton,
you say, look, George, you've got to, you know, you just have a quiet word. They knew the ones that lived close, so they used to have little 15-minute sections.
Yeah, that's it. So obviously I know we'll talk about your injury in a bit later on, but did you ever, you know, me personally, again, the bad side of football is when I only was out for 6 weeks maximum, stuff like that, but I felt I was never a part of the environment of the group. So for me, I was looking back now, I was quite depressed really, and I probably only had a calf injury for 6 weeks, but that for me was a bad side, because I was thinking, you know, you can't, the gaffer didn't really want to know you, did he, because you obviously injured players. So that for me, it was not a bad time, because like I say, I've never really had a major injury, but I just never felt a part of it.
It's right, you're taken off to a different, not different world as such, it's a bit dramatic, and again, it depends whether it was a short-term, medium-term or long-term injury, and, you know, being with players, so, you know, I've experienced both. So if you have your little ankle tweak where you're out for 2-3 weeks, a little hamstring, a little calf might be a week or 2 weeks, you go into a different thing, and then you've got your rehab to come back. So the worst ones, when you used to do your ankle ligaments, you'd have like sort of 2-3 weeks of treatment, morning, afternoon, and then you'd have your coming back, and then your introduction to the reserve games, and then your whole timing changed. So the lads would go out and play, you'd go and have to wait in your queue with everyone else to go and have your ice and statics or whatever treatment you was having. Then you'd be lunch, and then it would be the same in the afternoon, and you are taken away from the main group, and they're coming back in of whatever's going on in training, or, you know, the game at the weekend. You're no longer part of it.
That's what I mean. If you feel like an outsider, don't you? It's so bad. Yeah.
And then you form your groups. So the ones who are long term. I mean, with me, there was always, I always remember Lee Hurst, Tim Blake, and the back end of Stuart Robson, who all had knee injuries, and Paul O'Brien, who was a young lad.
Yeah. What about Waspy? He was always injured.
Jim
Williams.
They were. You would get into, so whoever was injured, you've then become a little bubble with those, and your daily routine would be, you know, let's go and have a cup of tea now, let's have, you know, and you would form that sort of relationship, like and you might meet someone, you might get closer to someone might not be in your group, or might be in the reserves coming through or whatever, and you find out a little bit more about them. But you're absolutely quite right. You are different.
It's like isolated, isn't it? Really. Yeah. You're away from it.
Yeah, and just leading on that, because it links into a little bit of when I got injured. So I'm not going to gloss over it too much, because you'll ask me some more direct questions on it. But I took myself away. So for that last year, they could do, the George and the team that could do nothing for me. I was under consultants in Manchester, and I couldn't take any more of going into the training ground and watching the players play, and it was twofold to that. One, I couldn't watch that anymore because it wasn't my life anymore, and two, I didn't want to be a reminder to the players of this could finish your career. Well, it's finished my career. This could be you, and I didn't want me put in that situation where they might be looking at me going, I'm a constant reminder of the worst thing every player dreads.
Yeah, totally right. The ugly side then, what would you say, even modern day now, what would you say the ugly side to football is, going back from your day to present? It's got to be social media?
It's got to be the hate crimes, the racism, all that side of it. Still how football just hasn't learned over the years. We still can't. I mean, we've got a football club and a rugby club here. You know, if you come and watch a rugby game, you can be sat next to whoever you're playing against with a beer in a plastic thing, sat in the stands. You can't do football like that. It's segregation. It's territorial, and we won't. That won't change. It's that. I'd like to say it's getting better. You don't hear so much of the hooligan fights on the terraces or that anymore, but it still goes on. You ain't going to be that naive to.
So it's gone underground more, hasn't it? Because we
being
live.
pushed aside on it, really.
Yeah, some say we live in a surveillance state. Everything's on camera all the time, but perhaps a lot of the abuse and the aggravation is sort of surreptitious. And I think probably that's just as bad in many ways. And I mean.
But at least people, I'd like to think people don't get caught up in it now.
Yeah.
So if those groups of fans, whoever they are, want to meet up on the side to be, we did this to you and all that, the people who are doing it anyway, we don't want it to be, but they'll take it away.
Well, I must admit,
but the grounds are a lot. So you don't see any fighting in the ground. You'll see little bits, and now and again. But there's that many police and stewards and things like that.
I must admit, as a football fan, I remember even in the 2000 when we played Villa in the League Cup, the year we won the League Cup, massive groups of Aston Villa fans waiting for Leicester fans outside the stadium. I don't think you get that now. No. They're all tooled up and whatever. I don't think you get that anymore.
No, like you say, there's cameras everywhere and things like that. But I think the social media side of it has not, and I still think they've still got to do a hell of a lot more to stop these. I mean, you just look at what happened in the Euros with, after the penalty shootout. I mean, that shouldn't happen. That should be stopped straight away and removed and people barred. And there should be more for people signing up to these accounts. You've got to be more, give your passport details.
Well, Troy Deeney said that. Absolutely.
Something that ties you to it, and that needs to change from them people.
And surely it's incumbent on these social media companies, that seem to run the world, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, that they've got all the power. Just make it more. Transparent.
It'll be a flick of a button somewhere. It'll be a tick
exactly.
box, right?
Yeah.
Anything.
As Troy Deeney said, look, hand over your driving licence, birth certificate, whatever it is, you'll get some form of accreditation. It might be a tick, it might be, and it would stamp it out overnight because this trolling is it causes societal damage as well as
the keyboard warriors. The people they wouldn't. You put those two people together. I'm not saying it, but they would not say a word.
No.
Well, over a keyboard where there's no. Anonymity is there. Nobody can see them. They can say what they want, and it's.
I mean, I've got a story. This is gospel truth. So I got a couple on social media, probably say 8-9 years ago. I can't remember where I was. I must have. I was a manager or something. I've lost 2 or 3 games, and he's this hammering me, absolutely hammering me. You can't. Me personally, I don't like to bite back. You just listen to it. Anyway, I was shopping with a family in Milton Keynes, and I promise you now, the 2 lads was there. I just went over and it just banter. All of a sudden it just dropped. So that back then I was thinking, well, the keyboard warrior side of things, they obviously clearly are exactly what it says on the tin. Because they literally didn't know what to say to me. They left straight away. I wasn't rude or anything. I just went, look, I'm human. I've got my family. There, they're going, it's just banter, and it all comes down to that banter, but it's not banter, is it?
Because they don't know.
They've just been found out.
Because they don't know the personal side of it, of either side of it, which is why they can have a go at it. But when they go, well, actually. Never realised he was married, he's got kids.
It affects everything, doesn't it? It's a knock-on effect,
and it works the other way as well. He goes, why are you that frustrated? And he goes, well, I was frustrated because of the result. And, it's that communication which has to...
But look at the societal damage that all of this trolling has caused as well. The tension, racial tension, whatever it might be. in wider society. I mean, they are responsible for a lot of damage.
You know, they've created the platforms and not realised the damage that it could do. And the worst ones for me, obviously, racism, hate crimes, all of that are absolutely disgusting. But the ones where these young people are taking their lives and people are egging them on to do that through whatever imperfections they think they have. And it comes into that whole mental health and well-being. That's just...
It's a real double-edged sword.
And it can be
unite us,
It can be such a great thing. I mean, you know, the work I do at the moment as a charity, it's a great way of informing people what we do, celebrating what we do. You know, you look at these pictures around this room. These are all from things the club and the community. You know, that one down there. That's what it's for, not the other stuff. So that's the ugly side of... And that's not just football, by the way.
No, that's just in the world itself. So obviously when you was playing there, do you ever get any supporters on your back as a group or as obviously an individual like yourself? You know, Coventry maybe had a little bit of a spell where nothing really went too good. Did you ever hear anybody come up to you or from the stands? Did it affect you if it did, or?
I didn't. To be honest, I'd have to write a letter. He'd have to arrive in the post. He'd have to. I'd have to get it. Yeah, I know.
On the terraces, you know, when you're getting off the team coach, you know what I mean? It's like
I didn't experience it. You played with the crowd. You can hear whether they're disappointed or if you come up. But you block it out. For me, I blocked it out. I was, if there's that many people, you can't understand. And again, it's frustrating or things like that. Most of the time. It wasn't too bad. You knew from yourself you had a particularly bad game. I've been pulled off at half time in the first team game by Bobby Gould, and I'm sure the fans were probably booing as I was going off. But to be honest, I wasn't thinking about that.
And how do people receive you now? Let's say in Coventry or wherever, or just in if someone bumps into you in the street.
I would like to think they remember. I mean, I've worked for the charity now for 25 years, and obviously the injury that I had. And how it was taken in by the Coventry people, and I'm a Brummie, and my social media says adopted Coventry, and I'd like to think the work that I do and go out my way to help and have done. This isn't just now. This is through the time and through the injury. It's a two-way thing, and it's again, as I said right at the start, it's treat others how you'd want to be treated yourself. So if I walk across to get me lunch today and someone wants to talk to me about Bournemouth, I'll have a conversation with them, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You know.
Brilliant. The highs then, Mr. Busst, the highs of your career. Talk me about your debut. How excited was you? Did you get thrown in? Did you know 24 hours, 48 hours before the game?
It was weird, and it's about probably being in the right place or the wrong place, depending on what you look at it. So we played a reserve game. Coventry drew with Norwich in the FA Cup on the Saturday. We had a reserve game on the Monday, I think it was. We were travelling, the first team were travelling for the double header because they got the replay on the Wednesday night and they got the league match against Norwich on the following Saturday. So the lads were going down for a 3-4 day trip. So we've been absolutely useless in the reserve game, and I can't remember the Hay Roberts, I think it might have been. He'd come in and absolutely hammered us. Experienced pro. We'd lost. I can't remember what it was. You always forget the losses, don't you? But Jed, Pete Billing, who's played alongside me that time, he's noticed that the Bobby Gould's come in the dressing room and had a word with H, and then they've come back into the room. And this is where you talk about experience. So Jed was probably on his way out then, playing reserve football. And all of a sudden he goes, George, got a bit of a strain with me calf. So you've got an ice pack. I thought, oh, that's straight. So he puts his ice pack on. And then H comes in and goes, right, we need a couple of bodies for the trip to Norwich. So straight away, he's clocked and realised, and he was at this stage then, he probably, I don't know whether he'll mind me saying it or not, but he didn't want to just go down there for a 4-day trip, being away overnight, not realistically going to play like that. And he was looking around, he goes, right, we need another centre-half cover. I was sat next to Pete. Right, you Steve, bring your stuff, you're travelling to Norwich next 4 days. So for me, it was great. I mean, the first time I'm in the squad, going down for 4 days, was staying at some hotel down in Norwich. Oh, it was brilliant. And I was put on the bench for the the FA Cup game. So again, absolutely brilliant. We lost the cup match. Lloyd Maguire came off in about the 91st minute with an injury or something. I went on for a minute. I think I ran on the pitch and ran off. It was that. But to be part of it, and it was only the couple of subs. It might have been 1 or 2 subs used up then. Yeah. Maybe a goalkeeper. And then on the Saturday, I was rooming with Andy Pearce. He hadn't had a particularly great game. I think Bob had made it clear in training that he was a sort of scapegoat for it. And then I got a call on the Friday after we trained. You're starting tomorrow. Get a good night's sleep. Blah, blah, blah. And it was like then you're phoning the family. Then you've got to travel down to Norwich. You're then turning up. Knowing that you're playing. To me, I'd probably have just preferred if they told me on the day, not the night before.
Yeah,
I didn't
too much time to think in it.
And we played Norwich, and I think Chris Sutton was playing for Norwich then, and we drew. I think we drew 1-1. But the thing for me was that we were on Match of the Day on the night, and I was in a pub in Kingsheath with friends, family, and on I'll say big screen. I'm talking about the big TVs that go back that way. He was in the corner of the screen. Match of the Day comes on, our game comes on, and there you are.
So going back with Chris Sutton, then, he would have known that you would have been making your debut. Did he automatically draw towards you to try and bully you, or?
I don't know. Because he was.
Can you remember much about your debut?
Yeah, no.
No, you don't know, do you? It goes that quick.
And I'd like to think that I think Grant, he seems to ring a bell. I think he was playing. He was the more experienced player because obviously Sutton went on and did very well at Norwich, then went to Blackburn, and obviously I went on to play against Sutton at Blackburn. Yeah. And I couldn't even tell you who I played alongside. I'd guess it was Peter Atherton, but you play the game, you get through it, and and then you judge by if you're in the squad for the next one, and then for the next 3 months. Till the end of the season, I think I played 12 games, was on the bench for quite a few games, and thought I'd made it then.
It's interesting hearing about the highs that you had, because obviously, you're known for the most illustrative injury in the Premier League history, probably. But to a lot of football fans, sort of our age, Scott, you were becoming an established centre back, and were known for being a decent player. And at my school, you were quite famous before the injury. I'll tell you why. Because there's a couple of Blackburn Rovers fans. Of course, Blackburn were the defending champions in 1995. A lot of newbies to football adopted Blackburn because they were great and they had the Jack Walker money. But Cov did Blackburn 5-0, and you scored the opener, I think. And this lad, this one particular lad I know, was a Blackburn Rovers fan. Everyone was shouting David Busst every time they saw it. David Busst, chanting David Busst. So you're certainly in Leicester, in one particular school, you were very well known.
So was that your first goal then?
It wasn't. No,
scored against Wimbledon, didn't you? Before the opener?
so the year 94-95 season. The first part of the season was when I was talking earlier about Phil Neal, and Bobby had left and Phil Neal took over. So I started every single game from the beginning right up to about Christmas, and I ended up just after Christmas. I had a double hernia, so I missed then the next 6 months because I couldn't, because the 2 hernias. I mean, I talk about I've never got that injured that much, but significant ones are the double hernia, which they didn't detect at the same time. So I had to spend 3 months out with one, and then the season was over. And again, when Ron Atkinson came into me, and you talk about managers earlier, he goes, the first thing when I met Ron Atkinson was going past each other in the tunnel at Brighton, and he went, Dave Bewes. I went, yeah, you're no use to me while you're injured, and carried on walking.
And that's exactly how it was.
And, you can't imagine that now, can you?
No, bizarre.
It depends whether they want to have a conversation with us, a bit of banter. Ron was that sort of character.
Oh, he's a good, bubbly character. So your first goal then, was it against Wimbledon?
So we started that game, we played Wimbledon. I'd just literally signed the 2-year contract on the Thursday before we were there, and I was starting. And, it couldn't, beautiful sunny day. We were 1-0 down. I think it was the second half. It was in front of the
And you started this game?
Started that game. I went on to start every game up until Christmas.
So those goals, because you scored 5 in total, didn't you? They must have been, I'll never know what it's like scoring a goal. You certainly won't, Scott.
Not in the Premier League, mate.
But it must have been incredible highs as well.
That free kick, Morgs took a curling left foot, and it was just a diving header from about, I want to say 20 yards out, but it was probably about 12.
Yeah.
But it was, we drew 1-1. It was my first goal. Went off celebrating. I remember Mickey Quinn sort of saying to the ref, first goal, because I don't know what I was doing. I think looking at the clips you see, I was doing nothing. It's embarrassing. But it's just, and then you see that goal on Match of the Day, and it's. And they're the height. And any goal you score is brilliant, honestly.
So didn't you go out after that game, or did you purposely stay in and watch Match of the Day to actually watch you go back? Because you do that, don't you?
Well, I wouldn't know.
Me personally, I'd
you, mate.
have got absolutely bladdered and taped Match of the Day back in the day. But
you know what? I can't remember what
I'm the same.
I can't remember where we went.
We were saying in the car, because we're talking about the highs, that because the Premier League's official website has it down that you're Scottish. So you might need to have a word with them about that. So we were going, hang on, prior to the injury, he's playing for a lower to mid-table Premier League side. Predominantly, most of the centre halves in that era are British, but the Scotland squad wasn't particularly blessed with depth. Of course, we had Colin Hendry, who was a Premier League winner, Colin Calderwood, I think. Yeah. But after that, it was like Derek White and a few quite obscure centre backs in the squad. Well, surely David must have had one eye on the Euro 96 squad. So let's just say you had a Scottish granny, right? Just say, would you have stopped Gaza if you'd have played?
No. Definitely not.
Do you think in your own ability you'd have got into that Scottish squad? I would.
I'll be honest, I never even thought about international football.
Did you not?
Never on my radar or thinking anything of it. The only time I did think about it was when Liam Daish got in the Irish squad when he was playing for Birmingham City, who were in League 2, were they? Yeah. Maybe League 1, Premier League, Championship, League 1.
League 1.
And I then thought, because Phil Babb was in the Irish squad as well.
Yeah.
It was bloody good as well. Was it 94 America?
Yeah.
So that's in that, and just seeing when you see a player from lower down getting in it. When my mum was Irish, and I think she might have wrote a letter to Jack Charlton, I think, or something. But if it was around that time, like say 94, I'd only just got in the Cov side. When that was happening. So before then, I'd had a year where I hadn't played in the first team.
Crazier things happened. So like in the Matt Elliott signed for Leicester, direct comparison, of course, from Oxford in, I think, 97 for 1.6 million. Big signing. And they found a Scottish granny for him. And he got in the Scotland squad in 1998, and hung around the Premier League as a bloody good centre-back as well for years and years and years. So I think, some particularly with centre-backs and centre-forwards, conversely, I think that you've always got half a chance of nicking into an international squad if you have a good run of form. And you were certainly, in the season you got injured, yes, Cov shipped a lot of goals, and you stayed up on goal difference, but you yourself were, reading through some of the match reports and whatever, were making a bit of a name for yourself as a centre-back. You're doing quite well.
Me, obviously, I watched a lot of the games, obviously. Me, personally, watching that, you was always a steady 7, always. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You didn't particularly have a really bad game. I mean, you was just a very good, one of the first on the team sheet for me type of player.
And that's what you want.
Do you know what I mean?
That's what you want.
So that, for me, would have got you in some kind of international squad.
I was always an honest player.
Yeah.
So I'd always been told, work hard, regardless of how bad you're playing, you can still run around mark and things like that. And nobody, no matter how good they are in the team, skillfully wise or anything like that, you can still run around and mark and work hard. And
that's what the supporters want.
And that's what they got from me.
That's what managers want.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'd put my head where it got hurt, I'd put my foot where it got hurt, I would run until the cows come home. And that's what and there was quite a lot of honest players. And that's what, again, I come back to your moulds and how you brought up and how
that's true.
Your values that you lead your own life on and off the pitch as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we know, I think, what the lows are going to be. It's just, I can remember, obviously, what is it, 96, was it? Yeah. November, December time?
Is it
April?
Oh, was it April?
Was
it April?
Done your homework, Scott.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Look, I mean, he's got the thingy there. I mean, I'm a part of that. But I'm a part of that squad. You know what I mean? But I can remember, it was horrendous. I mean, obviously, you went through it, but all my age group was like, but I don't think we actually realised how bad it actually was at the time. Do Do you know what I mean? Obviously, I think you've got a quote saying, you know, what I'm going to do, this is my end. But
you're shouting over to the bench when you're on the stretcher. This is the end of.
I said to Gordon Strachan as we were going off through the tunnel at Man United, I said, that's it now, isn't it? Because I just thought then I had a broken leg. I didn't know the complete damage of it.
Because I can remember we was chatting as a youth team and we're thinking, you know, obviously we've seen it then and we're thinking, oh my God, it's horrendous. But like I said, we was only 16, 17 at that time, so we kind of didn't realise. And this is just us thinking, he's got a chance of coming back. But then obviously, well,
it happened. It's that weekend happened. So it started before then because we played Liverpool on the Saturday and beat them at Highfield Road. Noel had, I can't remember if it was 2-1 or 1-0, but Noel a ball had been played behind him and he'd done sort of an overhead.
Yeah.
It was a hard to reach shot and he put it in and we won that. So we knew we had a big double header that weekend, you know, because we still needed a few results to stay up. So we were all buzzing after beating Liverpool at home, and then, you know, the gaffer's making the same starting 11 for the game at Old Trafford, and then you know, I'm looking at their team sheet and thinking, God, I'm playing against Eric Cantona, and then the whole prep of, you know, travelling up there on the Sunday. I can't remember whether we stayed overnight or whether we went up there on the coach. Details like that, I just I would imagine we went on the coach on the day because it was Bank Holiday Monday.
Right.
And
what, in November?
Yeah, I had a big coat on. It was cold. So we, I mean, Old Trafford's just, you know, the stadium's unbelievable. And the Cov fans, they hadn't finished their, I think it's 75,000 now. I think their capacity was down to about 56 because they hadn't had that last one on. And Coventry had got a small band of about 2,000, which when you come out of the changing rooms at Old Trafford, I don't even know what end it is. It's on the diagonal in the corner.
That's it.
Cov fans are in the opposite one. So you go out and do your warm-up, you head straight for them. Your little band of 2,000 Cov fans, you know, because that's your moment of solace in this massive stadium. So you do your warm-up in front of them and, you know, you're having a look at them doing their warm-up, you're looking at their players. But I was never, I knew who players were, but I was never starstruck to go, oh my God, you're calling the headlights on them foes or anything like that. It was just like, this is our game plan. Let's just prepare like we normally do and we go on it. And we started off really well. We had a corner after a minute. So we had set pieces for corners. But I just remember, as we got our corner, I always remember, and maybe this might be afterwards, probably not at the time, but I was stood next to Eric Cantona for probably about 30 seconds, you know, because he'd stayed up, we'd gone on the attack, got a corner, I was marking him, and in the theatre of dreams, and that's what it was, because Eric Cantona was obviously such an icon, then, still is now. And we had a corner, so corner came over, flicked on at the near post, because I think we were doing number 3. By Noel Whelan. My job was to come at the far post and then any bits that dropped, get something on the end of it, head, foot, anything. And the ball dropped absolutely perfectly. Saw it, went steaming in to get it to try and poke it because it was that sort of at the end of the reach. And then, and again, some of these memories aren't memories of actually what happened. They're things that from pictures like that might have gone in. But I was, in my head, Denny Sohn was on the post there, so the goal's here. He's on the post here. He's coming off the post there to block the ball that's dropping here. And he's coming in with his foot to do a block challenge. Brian McClare was on the other side of me, coming back that way to try and slide in and get the ball that's landing there. I'm coming from here to get there. So there's 3 forces coming towards it. I go in and get the ball.
And you're fully committed, obviously.
Yeah. They're coming in from either side at the exact same time. If one of them had been delayed slightly by the other, I'd probably have a damaged knee or something. They both hit me at the same time, and when 2 forces, I don't know if you're any good at physics, but when 2 forces come together and you've got an immovable object, there's only one thing can happen, and that's combustion, and it'll break.
There's double compound fracture.
Double compound fracture. So my foot went to that way, from the halfway down the shin up to there, so L-shaped. More or less. At that stage, I've just gone into, I can only remember as being shock. I was looking away. I always see a picture of Dion Dublin with his hand on his head, going like that. And then and brilliant, you know, George Dalton's, you know, that was our physio on the day. Man United had their physio. There was a doctor on the side. They all came on. So if you're going to break your leg, you break it at Old Trafford because everything's there. Straight into the back of the ambulance. The ambulance reversed down more or less to the pitch, and it was going on the stretcher then, where Gordon had come down to just, you know, see how it was. because I had family in there as well. And that's when I said, oh, that's it now, thinking I just had a broken leg. But the most painful thing was obviously the injury, the impact of the injury. But Man United have got the biggest speed bumps outside and loads of them. So trying to get out of Old Trafford to the thingy, and
every
they were just
single
bang,
bump.
bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
I remember every single one of them, and that was really, really painful. So going to, I think it was Good Hope Hospital it was, they're going to try and reset the brake, put it straight and find out what the damage is and things like that. I'll never forget, just about to go under, and one of their porters came running down, and Man United had just scored, so they were 1-0, and he's jumping up and down, and this was like 2 seconds. They just cut the sock off took my boot off and all that.
Totally inappropriate.
Yeah, I understand, it's football, but I just saw that was the last thing. I thought, oh shit, shouldn't swear. I thought, obviously, we lost 1-0. And then, the rest, depending on how much detail you want.
At the time, the media reported it extensively, but didn't show, as my memory serves, all of the graphic images.
Yeah.
For a couple of days, maybe 2 or 3 days, at least. Did you, when were you aware of just how severe it was, with sort of the bone sticking out?
I didn't see a media picture for 6 months, because I didn't want to look at any pictures or anything, and obviously there was a lot of press constantly initially for the first 6 weeks, and then it was every, I was for the next year I was going everywhere doing interviews on breakfast TV, big breakfast. Most weeks I was doing an interview of something with someone, and that became my life and got me through the next sort of 12 months.
Psychologically, you mean it got you through?
Yeah. It just gave me. Obviously, I was having treatment. I had to carry on having treatment. So within the first 12 days of being in hospital, I had 10 operations. Now, when you talk about when did I realise the severity of it, was after the initial operation where they'd sort of reset it and put me in a back slab. To hold my foot up like that and the leg there. I then had to, all of a sudden, I had this massive pain in my, like it's like a throbbing, and I just kept saying, my dad had stayed overnight. I said, look, it doesn't feel right, and they're saying, oh look, you broke your leg pretty badly. It'll be. I said, no. I said, my toe shouldn't be throbbing like that. And it's way too much pain. And I was just saying, look, is it too tight? Have you wrapped it too tight and anything like that? And then they got the doctor in and said, when they looked at it, and they went, oh yeah, we'll see what you mean. And what had happened was the impact on the right there, on the right side of my shin, it was like, they call it a hematoma, it's a dead leg. So it'd been hit that hard, that muscle was beginning to expand because of the build-up of the pressure of the blood. And I was whisked to a plastic surgeon on the other side of Manchester, because I needed a different type of consultant, surgeon, to correct this. And what they did in the end was they cut down. I mean, Scott, you've seen it, I don't mind showing you. I don't mind showing anyone, to be honest. That muscle there...
Try and get this if you can.
Had got... that's the top of it, that's left there. But the rest of it, they had to cut it to release the pressure. So all the operations I just told you about were because of this then got infected, because I got MRSA in hospital. And then this wouldn't heal in the wound, which was there. So that's the break where it came through. Yeah, so that used to be on the back of my calf. I had to create a blood supply to the wound, which is why they took it off there. And I had skin grafts from my hip, which were put onto there to correct that.
So psychologically then, if you just go back a second, when you've suffered this break, and you know it's a really bad break, but presumably people are keeping the full horrors from you just for your benefit, are you thinking this is the end of, you're saying this, this is the end of my career, I'm finished. What's going through your head? Like, financial future, are you worried about that? Or is it the fact that you're, the glories you might miss out on?
So when I was on the stretcher, I was just thinking, that's it now from my playing at the highest level, because I was thinking it's a leg break then.
Yeah.
When I went into hospital and having that many operations in the first few weeks, and being told that if the next operation isn't successful, we'll be cutting your limb from below the knee, then the rest of football goes out the window.
Yes.
It's about then, right, quality of life. It's about what am I going to do next. It's but I've always, footballers are very resilient. In the nature of the football industry of either being dropped or being injured or anything like that, you've got to be able to take the knocks. Some player, not every single player, but to be a professional footballer, you've got to be resilient to things like injuries, being dropped, how it affects you, how you come back from it, and things like that. So, you know, I'm always on that thing, right? I can't worry about what's gone on before it, can't control that, can't do anything about it. What I can do is control what happens in the future. So, you know, and obviously being a footballer, you're obviously very fit. So being able to go through all those operations in the first 12 days, the only way I could do it would be a professional footballer or a professional athlete, because they're fit enough to undergo all the anaesthetics and things like that and recover from it. So they were all recovery models that had to be done to get me back to, at that stage, and I probably knew myself that the extent of the injury, because when that exploded there, if it had just been the break nicks together, repairs, as horrific as it was as coming off, well, if it comes out the skin, it's not clean. If it stays in contact, so when people refer me to broken legs now, first thing I say, right, did it stay within the skin or has it come out the skin? Because it's key things, because if it stays within the skin, it's protected, and it's because there's no infection can get in. So that's the biggest thing that can happen. If it comes out, then you've got to worry about infection. Mine was infection. That got in, not the actual break, but into the sort of the secondary injury that I had. And the thing that stopped me playing was that muscle there. So if you look at your hand, they're your tendons, they're pulled together. So if you do that, you feel the muscle moving in your arm. That muscle is equivalent to that in my shin. So, so no longer could I pick my foot up, because that muscle has gone. So I'm left with a drop foot, regardless of whether this is broken, open, compound, spiral, because that's my fracture was about 6 different ones on the types of fractures you can have. So it's left like that, so I can't pick it up. So that's what stopped me playing football. But I didn't know, that wasn't confirmed until 6 months after the actual injury. But I knew I probably knew after about 3 or 4 weeks in hospital, because when you have that conversation where they're talking about
the undertones of what the professionals are saying and all the rest of it. And it's interesting you touched upon the fear of amputation, or half amputation, should I say, previously, because if it had occurred, say, 20 years prior, that would have been a likely outcome. Am I right in thinking?
Yeah, I definitely would have. You know, and you know, I'm not a religious person or anything, but I got on the afternoon. I was going in, and they said, right, you'll wake up, and it will be one of 2 ways. If you're in an oxygen tent, you're in intensive care, and we've removed the shin from below the knee because we can't the infection. You'll have an epidural, because that will help with the pain and everything like that, and you probably won't be able to move much at all, because they were taking a muscle out of my back to try and create another blood supply, and these were all the things that were going to be involved in it all. So they were basically telling me, when you wake up, you'll have this or that. And when I did wake up, and the pastor from the hospital had come to see me, and just done a prayer. Again, I'm not religious. Went down for the operation, came round, I woke up in the room. I was in the same room as when I'd gone down. Got nothing around me. I got a big pain in my back from the epidural. I thought, look down, there's me leg. Then obviously when they see you coming round, the nurses and the senior nurse came in, and I went, and you know, you get to know. I was having, you know, it wasn't intensive care, but I had constant, you know, nurses checking on me every half an hour and stuff like that. And the guy came in to me and said, oh, brilliant news. As we took all the dressing off to have a look, it started showing signs of healing. So we left it.
Great.
And that was the most brilliant piece of news that I could have had, because my thoughts going into that were, my God, how am I going to walk again? How am I going to run again? How am I going to be able to?
Man.
Yeah. How am I going to run about with my kids?
Yeah.
And to be told that, so football went out the window.
Yeah, of course.
You know, when you expect.
The nearest comparison, really, I suppose, in the era where you suffered the injury was that of Luke Nillis, ex-Aston Villa, was playing for Aston Villa, I think, against Ipswich. Again, at the first few minutes of the game, he collided with Richard Wright, the Ipswich goalkeeper. And Jim Walker, I interviewed him on the matter, and Jim Walker was the physio at Villa at the time, and everything you've just said is what Nillis was saying as well. You know, my career's finished, but then he's thinking, actually, you know, am I going to walk again? And he said, look, you know, 10, 15 years before, it's a magic sponge at best, and, you know, maybe before that you might lose part of your leg.
Yeah, it's just...
It's just mad, innit? 'Cause to be fair, I didn't even know about the amputation or the possible amputation. That's the first time I've known about that, to be honest with you. Obviously, you must have had so many dark days thinking about it. I mean, it's a weird one, really, innit? Because one, you've got your two legs, you know, blah, 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 but then it's like your football career, which we said, you know, it's irrelevant, really. But there must have been that element where you must have been so... Did you get help? You know what I mean? Was there any way that people, you know, sat you down and just said, look, you know, do you have counselling? You know, it must have been so hard. I mean, it was us, as for teammates, it was distraught, to be honest.
It was, as I say, I've always been a half glass full optimist, looking ahead, not looking back, and I'd have days when I'd be down because it was, you know, and usually, like when I talked about the attention, so from the press, people wanting to interview me, and then after 12 months that goes, and I'm still having operations up to 2 years afterwards, you know, all about rehabbing and trying to get a better quality of life, and one of the operations I had was to pull that tendon, the thickest tendon which I still had. I had 2 left of the 5, 3 were removed, but that allowed me to hold my foot in that position, and that was the most successful, which allows me to run about, kick a ball again, and all that. So all those subsidiary operations were there to improve my quality of life. But you know, I just always looked at it as going, right, I wouldn't go back and change a thing. I'd had 5 years playing at the top. It's then, right, what do I do now? What can I do while I'm in rehab that will help me to go on to my next stage? And as it was, I started doing my coaching qualifications. And I went back to college for a year to do some sort of sports injury course. I did it for a year. And then I got a job back in the community with Barry Powell. So Barry Powell's always been a big key part of my life, and still is. And but I've always been, so I never had counselling with anyone. I was offered it. We were having the sports scientists were coming into the training ground then, and Bobby Gould was a big believer in getting them to sit down and have a chat with you. But I was never comfortable with it. You know, I just didn't feel that I needed to talk to other people. I always had a big, I always had a good support network behind me with family and friends and all that, and they're key, and teammates to a certain extent, because as I told you earlier, I had to take myself away from going into training and pretending I'm still part of that life, and knowing, and the reminder what I was to players of what could happen. So, which is why I went and did my coaching badges, and I went to college from, I think it was 97 to 98.
So obviously you've forged a good career working at Cov, you know, as in the community role that you've got. But if you don't mind my asking, and we touched on it earlier, didn't we? Everybody assumes Premier League, huge mansions, you're set for life, multi-millions and all the rest of it. What was there an insurance payout? Did the club...
You know, was you in every, you know, obviously I know this is a massive personal question, but was it ever a worry that you financially could be a little bit, you know, kind of struggling, I suppose, in some respects? But
so the club gave me another year.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, on my contract.
Oh, right.
So I was out of contract at 96.
Right.
So when we were talking before, I was talking to Ron Atkinson about a new deal. But as it was, I'd have been one of the first Bosmans.
Right.
So I'm not saying I was in that type, but I could have gone anywhere.
Right age,
for free.
available for free.
Yeah. So so that was the situation. I was out of contract. So the club gave me another year's contract to get over it. It was just exactly the same contract I'd signed under Phil now, which is for another year. And then what the club and Man United had done was arrange a benefit game for me the following year on the 16th of May. And that was unbelievable, because there was 23,000 people turned up. We just stayed up on the Saturday against Spurs. I think we beat Spurs at White Hart Lane 3-1 to stay up. And one of my closest friends, Paul Williams, and we had a few Paul Williams at Coventry, he scored one of the goals at White Hart Lane. And on the Monday, they were queuing around Highfield Road and all the tickets were sold out by the Tuesday. The game was on the Friday, and it was the first time ever that a testimonial match had sold out in advance, because most testimonials are turn up on the day, pay your cash over the thing. So, you know, Man United had brought a full team down. Cantona had come down with it. Yeah, we had George Best was there. It was, you know, it was just a magical, brilliant night.
Bruce, I'm going to tell you something. I cried on that night. I genuinely did. I was so pleased for you, but so upset. And I genuinely, you asked John Andrews, I literally cried. I was absolutely devastated. Honestly,
it was such an emotional night, and you know, I'd come on the pitch, I took a penalty.
Past Michael, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was good.
Was that planned that he went that when you scored that? Was it planned?
It was planned with Schmeichel, but Schmeichel got took off. And Van der Gouw
that's
off.
De Gouw Neville, was that planned? He
so
took someone out.
If you look at if you see the highlight, he's
Gary Neville agreed to foul someone.
Well, I know.
Wow.
Yeah, he jumped up and hit the ball.
That was it.
That was his hand.
Was that handball? Was it handball?
And I went on, and then obviously Van der Gouw.
By the way,
was in goal.
Just let's stop there. That crowd then when he come on, you'll never forget it. Unbelievable.
And so I'd had this arrangement with Schmeichel. I said, right, because I'm taking it left-footed, because obviously my right leg couldn't take anything. So I said to Pete, I said, right, you go to your right, I'll put it to the left. Great, no problem. So then he gets taken off. So Van der Gouw's there standing in front of me. I thought, God, I've got to take this penalty now. So I'm sort of saying to him, I said, right, trying to relay the things right. You're going right, I'm going left. But am I telling him I'm hitting it that way? I thought, I just went, right, I've got to take this now. And I just whacked it to the left, actually, and he must have, and he went to the right. But it was that night, and that set me up with it. So any fears I had, immediate fears, with the benefit game and things like that, and you know, it allowed me to pay my mortgage off, and things like that. So then, but I still then had to go back to work, and then the offer I had after another year with Barry to go back and work in the community was brilliant then, because it was a nice introduction with my coaching. I was working for the academy when that had just been set up as well.
Yeah, because I did some coaching for you, if you remember.
Yeah.
I did some coaching in the community for him. Yeah, it was good, really good. I can remember, this is a story, me and David Burrows, obviously the communal baths at Brighton, on the training ground, me and him was just chatting away, and you've come in, obviously that was fresh, and you won't remember it. We're just there, and I knew what he was thinking, and he knew what I was thinking, and you've hopped into the bath. I just had to get, honestly, and I felt really bad, but it wasn't the fact that it looked like like a film, like where it was horrendous, and me and obviously Bugsy, we just had to get out. I don't think you've clicked on. We try to do it like, you know, in the best way possible, but I was nearly sick. Honestly, it was just like a dog's chewed
You're
his
a
calf.
charmer, you are.
No, I know. But it's never, honestly, for 27 years, I've never told him that. But I'm thinking, honestly, it was that chewed up. I thought, oh my God, bad. But then I cried at his testimonial, so you know.
You're a man of many emotions.
I have got a heart.
Yeah. But
no, that's well, we're just going to finish off quick fire questions. Who was the best manager you played under? And why?
That's tough. Phil Neal for giving me Bobby Gould for giving me my debut. Phil Neal for giving me that chance to go on and be an established first-team player. And Ron Atkinson was by far the best overall manager. And him with Gordon Strachan as coach, they were the perfect for that period of time.
Yeah, 100%.
I just named all of them.
It's all right, that's all right. So you're saying Ron Atkinson, realistically. The best centre-half partnership?
I would say Peter Atherton, because I learnt so much playing alongside him before he left.
What was Dacia like to play with, or obviously alongside?
Dacia was probably very similar to me in the fact of just how he played. He was well, I wasn't as aggressive.
You're an animal, aren't you?
Yeah, as him. He liked to have a scrap, a proper scrap. I was just, if the ball's there, try and win it. If not, but it was good to seeing him play against when we played at Everton against Duncan Ferguson.
That is a battle of the big boys, isn't it?
I positioned myself at the side of them. That's not me, you and Dacia.
Bosh in the back.
Yeah.
The best trainer?
Sean Flynn.
Really? He could leap as well, couldn't he?
Yeah. Physically, I'm talking about.
Was you Paul Telfer? He had a body enough, didn't he, Paul Telfer?
Flynn was the fittest by far across all of them. I mean, we're talking margin. Telfer would have been up there. Ability-wise, you know, Dion's overall game was unsurpassable. Nuddy's skill, Peter and Love.
What about Roy Wegley? Was you there?
Weggers, yeah.
He had some tricks and flicks, didn't
Yeah, and he was quicker than people gave him credit for. He was quicker than John Williams over 40 yards as well.
He was
Not
rapid
over
as well,
100,
wasn't he?
but that. So, yeah, Roy Wegley. Good, nice chap as well.
Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Was you there, Corby Jones, as well?
Kobe Jones, yeah. Well, my lad's called Kobe.
Oh, really?
Is that the American
Yeah.
international? Did he
Yeah.
play for them?
So Phil Neal signed him after America played England, didn't he?
There
when he
was,
on
there was a lot of anticipation because he looked great on
Yeah.
camera and stuff, and everyone thought he was going to be the next big thing.
Who should have gone on to do better, but didn't actually achieve?
Tony Sheridan.
Yeah, that's
Scott
good.
Goodwin.
You know, I think really, and he still had a good career. No Whelan. I think, I reckon he was that close.
He was a great finisher.
Honestly,
Unbelievable for me.
he had the size, he had the strength, he had the power.
Yeah.
He was that close. Just on a personal thing, he maybe could have gone to the next level of club.
Yeah, signed for Leicester or something, yeah.
He was, obviously, we signed him. We were signing for a couple of, again, I think
Leeds,
one and a half couple from
Yeah,
Leeds.
1.7, I think. or something like that.
Jordan Strachan went and got him, you know, from there, and he was unbelievable for us.
Yeah.
And I think afterwards he obviously had, you know, some issues where never probably, like you say, fulfilled his potential, but the clubs that he had. But I think he was, you know, I think he was his Leeds days, and then when he came to us.
Yeah. The worst trainer, but obviously produced in the games.
Worst trainer. I'm going to have to say worst trainer would probably be John Williams, the flying postman.
Yeah,
Because it was shocking him training, but he
laugh
produced.
when it comes to the game.
As quick as anything.
The worst dressed player you've ever come across, and this is the last question.
Oh God, worst dressed.
gotta be
Jonathan Gould.
Yeah,
Believe me, he was the worst dressed.
yeah, goalkeeper.
I really thought he was going to nominate you.
No
honestly.
chance. The best dressed.
Oh, I've got to say Scott, haven't I?
There you go. Bussty, absolute pleasure, mate. It really has been. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.